Hello, everyone. I'm Hans Engel from the Directors Guild of Canada. Welcome to our 14th episode of DGC Masterclass via Zoom. These are unprecedented times beyond anyone's imagining. The DGC recently posted this statement. The DGC is an organization that is strengthened by the talents and passion of diverse creatives and crew. We stand together in solidarity with the Black community and all those who still face discrimination and hate, to fight for a society free of systemic racism. Black Lives Matter. These are incredibly challenging times like nothing we've ever faced before, which makes me even more grateful that you are joining us tonight. We must be vigilant and engaged, and I believe that in order to engage at this level, we must also find time to disengage and recharge. The DGC prides itself on being the place where the creative community comes together to celebrate and discuss the work. With these masterclasses, we're going behind the scenes and talking to some of the top creatives in the industry in Canada and internationally, covering directors, designers, picture and sound editors. Each week, you'll receive an invitation with a specific link to tune in, and I'm also posting the links on my Instagram. So far, we've had Emmy-winning director Jean-Marc Vallée, Emmy-winning editor Kelly Dixon, Oscar-winning designers David and Sandy Wasco, a special event with brilliant Indigenous filmmaker Jeff Barnaby, two-time Oscar-nominated doc filmmaker Firas Fayyad, two-time Oscar-winning sound editor Karen Baker-Landers, Oscar and Palme d'Or nominee Adam Egoyan, Oscar-nominated designers KK Barrett and Patrice Vermette, Maverick filmmaker Bruce McDonald, Oscar-nominated director, writer, producer, and actor Sarah Polley, groundbreaking director Clement Virgo in conversation with Cameron Bailey, history-making 2019 Academy Award-winning production designer Hannah Beachler, and prolific director and actor Helen Shaver. All those can be found on the DGC National and DGC Ontario YouTube channels. Tonight, I'm very pleased to introduce our moderator. His first novel, Funny Boy, won the W.H. Smith Books in Canada First Novel Award and the Lambda Literary Award in the US. He's the author of Cinnamon Gardens and Swimming in the Monsoon Sea, and the editor of an anthology, Story Walla, a celebration of South Asian fiction. His books have been published in the US, the UK, and India, and published in translation in France, Germany, Italy, Spain, Sweden, Denmark, Turkey, and Israel. His third, The Hungry Ghosts, was published April 2nd, 2013 in Canada, India, and Sri Lanka. He wrote the screenplay of his first novel, Funny Boy, along with the award-winning Deepa Mehta, who also directed the film. We'll be talking about that tonight. The film will be released in 2021. In 2019, Media Headquarters, along with CBC, commissioned him to create a family drama titled Coming Home, which to date is unproduced. His new novel, Mansion of the Moon, a historical novel about the Buddha's wife, will be released by Knopf in 2022. In 2016, he had the very interesting honor, and I keep on meaning to ask why this happened, but he had the very interesting honor of having a spider named after him, Brignolia Shyami, a small goblin spider. Welcome, Sham Savadure. There he is. Just have to unmute.
Am I unmuted now? Yes.
You are.
Okay.
Welcome, Sham.
Thank you. I'm
thrilled to introduce tonight's featured guest. She's an Oscar-nominated filmmaker whose work is celebrated on an international scale. Her emotionally resonating, award-winning films have played every major film festival and been sold and distributed around the globe. Her films include the elemental trilogy Earth, Fire, Water, the final film of which received an Oscar nomination for Best Foreign Language Film, Bollywood Hollywood, Heaven on Earth, and the epic adaptation of Midnight's Children, Salman Rushdie's three-time Booker Prize-winning novel. Her work challenges traditions and stereotypes and is always daring, fearless, and provocative. It's this spirit that saturated her last feature film, Anatomy of Violence. She recently shot the pilot and second episode for the Netflix original series Layla and is the creative executive producer for the show. She also directed The Manager, the pilot episode of Little America for Apple TV. She's currently working on the feature film Funny Boy, based on the award-winning novel by Sham Savadore, with director of photography Doug Koch, editor Teresa Font, and music composer Howard Shore. Welcome, legendary Deepa Mehta.
Hi, everybody. Hi, Hans. That was lovely. Thank you. Sham, hi.
Hi.
Welcome, welcome. Now, before I turn it over to Sham and Deepa, I'd like to point out to our viewers the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. Feel free to send in questions, type them into that screen throughout the masterclass by using that button. Sham will try to get to as many questions as possible. He may not be able to get to all of them, but he will certainly try. Type them in at any point in the conversation. Have a fabulous conversation. I'll see you at the end. Over to you, Deepa and Sham.
Thanks, Hans.
Thank you. Thank you. It's lovely to be doing this, Deepa, even to be connecting even in this way.
I know.
I thought I'd start by asking you what you're doing right now and how it's changed by being in this odd period in our sort of world history where we're isolated from each other. So I was wondering what you were doing and how it's different, or is it different?
What I'm doing right now, Sham, is I'm doing the sound mixing, which literally means you take, at the end of the film, or the editing's done and everything's done, that you take the sound and you actually manipulate it, maneuver it, clean it up, and do the effects and things like even Foley, the footsteps, and put the music in and make the sound element of the film integrated, in fact. So that's what we're doing. And it's been an interesting process because it's the first time that, in the last 2 months, even though we finished editing in Madrid with Teresa, when we came back to Toronto, which was at the last minute and the last flight, in fact, from Madrid to Toronto, we've been working through Zoom and through emails and through a small screen. So suddenly to go to a theater and do the mixing theater at Tattersall and see the film on a large screen has been very interesting. The only thing that, actually it's a huge thing that's been very different, is a lot of us have time now. So the professionals who do like Lou is doing is the main mixer. The sound effects people, we've all had time. They have had time, in fact, to look at the film, to work on it, where they haven't had 20 other projects that I'm competing with. So in that way, I feel lucky that they have the time that we wouldn't have, ordinarily have. So that's good. And otherwise, it's weird. I mean, we feel isolated. I feel isolated at times and want to reach out. And it's sort of, I think, I feel that time is different. Time is melting. So I'm very keen to finish the films and show it to the world, because I feel I might get the virus tomorrow or something. I mean, who knows?
Don't say that, Deepa. No, you're never going to get the virus.
Oh, God. Better see the film release. It's all your fault, Sham.
Yeah.
You wrote the book.
Well, so that's great. Okay, so to start with the beginning. So when I was starting off trying to be a writer in the 1990s, there was practically nothing in South Asian literature. There was Rushdie and there was Narayan, and neither voices and material that they dealt with suited me. And then I read Anita Desai's Clear Light of Day, which was set in a middle class Delhi, and suddenly I could see a way in which I could write. Suddenly I said to myself, I can become a writer. I know how my material is to be processed. And I was wondering if there was a moment for you like that, when you suddenly said to yourself, yes, I can do this.
I think that, yes, there was. In fact, I mean, I thought of and it began with what happened to what became actually my first feature film, which was Sam and Me. And I remember not the exact moment, but I remember that time of feeling really um, really not understanding how I fit into Canada. So sort of feeling like an alien, except not. And it was trying to understand what the immigrant experience was. And I said, I better write about it because I can't seem to express it. I'd come across people who'd say, oh my God, you speak really good English. And I'm talking about 30 years ago or something. And I'd say something like, oh, I think once I was very flip and I said, youth is really weird. But I said something like, oh, I learned it on the plane coming over. And they actually turned and said, that's great. So nobody even listens, So it was like really a period of great frustration. And Sam and Me, which is a story of an immigrant trying to find himself. The story is about a young man in Toronto, and what it's like became the first feature film. So it was, I think all my films, in fact, Shyam, have originated from curiosity or even trying to understand something that I'm very curious about. I was really curious about exploring not only my immigrant experience, but what could be a universal experience that was of being the other. And even Funny Boy is actually my curiosity about Sri Lanka and how being queer and yet being political can be married together. And so everything is based on curiosity in that sense.
That's so interesting to hear you say that, because I remember watching Sam and Me when it came out in 1991, wasn't it?
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
just thinking, I mean, I met you before that, and I just thinking, yes, yes, there it is up on screen. There's us up on screen for me for the first time seeing it. And I also remember thinking, where has she found the guts to deal with racism, which is
Mhm.
sort of a big taboo in this country, and not, where I suppose our national myth is we're the most liberal, open country in the world. And I just found that was amazing. And I was just wondering, I want to just spend a few minutes, because of especially the time we're in right now,
Mhm.
talking about race. And I was wondering how it was for you. I mean, this is an industry that we've seen a lot of toxic white male behavior recently. And I was wondering, you're a woman, you're South Asian. I was wondering how you work in this world, but it's how you negotiate it.
I mean, it's more than for me. It has been, I more a negotiation with myself. It's like, what do I want to do? And especially if I actually, when I sort of grew up and in the film world and realized the stories I wanted to tell and my own sort of very political leaning, which I couldn't get away from. I mean, you look at the trajectory of everything that I've done, it is political. And reading, I think, reading somewhere, I think it was Brecht who said that uh, all art is political. Uh, no, everything is political and art is a hammer. And I thought, my God, of course. So that stayed with me, that sort of that desire to, whatever happens, I will try and be the hammer. So that actually really helped me not to, even for a second, feel victimized, which I should have, because it was, and it continues to be in a different way, a toxic environment if you aren't white. And that is the reality of, I mean, I'm glad we're not the States, but that doesn't help you. The point is, we are who we are, and we do live in a society that can be toxic and is toxic to somebody who's not white. And I told myself that I'm not going to be victimized or let myself be victimized by that, because there is that feeling that comes to you, or came to me, that I could start feeling sorry for myself, and I just didn't want to go there. So perhaps it's just being pig-headed, and that's how I dealt with it, by being pig-headed. That makes
That's
sense.
the
I
best
don't
way to
know.
be in the industry. Any industry is to be pig-headed. I was wondering, I mean, my goodness, you did Sam and Me in 1991. we're now in 2020, and I was wondering, how has the industry changed, or has it changed in terms of race, or in which ways has it changed? How have you seen the change? I mean,
I think that it has changed. It has changed a bit, but I think it's going to really change now with the protests happening and Black Lives Matter and everybody's awareness. The way it changed that, suddenly every film festival, everything in Canada was, they'd start by saying that we are standing on Indigenous land. It was like overnight it became. I'm not doubting people's sincerity, but it became politically correct to say that.
yeah.
We acknowledge that where we're standing. What difference does it make? You haven't done anything better for the Indigenous people. But if it makes people feel good, why not? It's the same thing, I think, they became an awareness that perhaps we cannot just pay lip service to the fact that we're supposed to be a multicultural country. What does that mean? What does diversity really mean? We can't say we're a country that embraces diversity when actually our funding can only be for films that are either in English or in French. So how are you embracing diversity? It's a limited kind of a diversity. It's a handout. So I feel that my fight has been about trying to make, if anybody is a Canadian citizen, then it's really important they can tell the film in whatever language they choose to. If I want to make a film in Swahili, why not? I'm a Canadian citizen. I should be able to get money from Telefilm Canada or DC or CBC or whatever. So I've taken this very seriously, and I've been to the last heritage minister, and talked about it. So I think that perhaps there's an awareness that it's important. We have to stop paying lip service to the way we finance and nurture our filmmakers. If our strength is our diversity, but we can't pay lip service to that diversity. We have to actually say, yes, make your film in whatever language you wish to.
As a writer, there's so much exciting stuff coming out from racialized minority writers of the younger generation. And it's just so exciting. And I admire them, and I just love their work. People like Ocean Wong, or just a whole bunch of people I could name. And I was wondering if was any sort of filmmaker from a racialized minority whose work recently you've come across and just loved, and why? What about it sort of sparked you?
Actually, I'm really excited about the films I've seen recently by young Canadian filmmakers, or and whether they be colored or white. It's just really nice. There is you don't have to be colored to have a humane point of view. Buñuel said that the minute you're particular is the very minute you become universal. And I see that across the board. And that's been really exciting, seeing some work by colored filmmakers and Black filmmakers and Indigenous filmmakers, and as well as white filmmakers. Their voice is different. I think that there's a feeling of struggle, which is a struggle within themselves about art, not so much about having to prove anything, which is, I think, it's fabulous. It really is hopeful. And we've always, English Canadian cinema has always has never been as rich as it is been recently. It's very exciting. Yeah,
it's lovely to hear. That's so lovely to hear you say that. I just wanted to, it's amazing how time flies, so let's move on a bit.
Said that. When he said hour and a half, I said, are you serious? And he said, flies. I didn't believe him, but now I do.
And I always hyper prepare, so I have like 30 questions. We're not going to get there. So Deepa, I just wanted to jump ahead a bit, and then maybe I'll come back to some stuff later, although I see there's lots of questions coming up on the feed. I was going to talk a little bit about you as a writer.
Mhm.
even though it's a directors guild. I think, you are also a writer, and you've written your own screenplays. You've you've written your own screenplays. You've adapted novels on your own, and you've worked with writers of the novels to adapt the movie. And I was wondering what the difference is in terms of, um, not just about working with other people, but just about, because it's your project in the end. I mean,
Mhm.
you're the chief artist, and how do you find your way in when it's your work? How do you find your way in when you're adapting something like like what, like of Earth? And then how do you find your way in when you have that writer, much as you love them, I'm sure you find them a bit of a nuisance in some
Are you
way.
talking about yourself, Sham?
No, I'm not talking about, I'm talking about Salman Rushdie. I'm just joking. But yeah, I mean, I'm just curious because I mean, as a writer, it's so simple, right? I mean, it's just you, and you find the key into the project, and
Mhm.
you get into the world of the thing. And it's just,
It's different. It's different with different writers, with different books. I mean, with Babsi Sidhwa, with who wrote Ice Candy Man, which became Earth, it was very different. I mean, she just sort of handed me a book and she said, when you finish, let me know. And that was that. And it was very hands off. And it was lovely. I mean, I think it was a bit of a shock for her because she didn't even want to see the rough cut of the film. When she saw the fine cut, I think it was at the New York Film Festival, I don't know wherever. And she realized that I had actually eliminated the one third of the book at the end. So that was a bit of a shock for her. And I was sort of preparing her for it. And I said, perhaps we should sit down and talk about what you're going to be seeing and what I'm doing. And she said, no, 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 I don't want to hear. You just do it. And and there she was. And I thought, oh my God, when the film ended, where the book does not end and carried on for another 30 pages, it was, she was really, she was so generous because she realized that that I wasn't saying this is my film. I mean, or she wasn't saying it's my book. It becomes for me an entity that stands by itself. I can look at it objectively, and I forget that I had anything to do with it. Or, but in the same way, Babsy actually forgot that she or trained herself to not to comment on the fact that she'd written the book. So it's different with different writers. With Salman, it was. I thought the only best way. I mean, it's a bit intimidating. I mean, it's Salman Rushdie, right? And but he was also so generous, and we just sat down, and I thought, Salman, maybe the best thing is that why don't you write in point form how you would like the script to unfold, and I'll also do the same separately, and then let's see if you're on the same page. If you're on the same page, then we should work together, and if you're not, then it'll be a struggle. And so we did that. I did that in Toronto, he did it in New York. And when we got together, we found that our ideas were like 90% similar. So it became much easier. We knew. And it's the same thing with you, Sham. I mean, you'd written the first draft of Funny Boy, and, you know, I think it was 240 pages, wasn't it, or something? And so it was lovely to be, and I just came in as a director, but I remember talking to you and saying, it's a bit long, Sham. And you said, really? It was
no,
fun, so with you, it's been a partnership, so it's different. But, you finish writing a script, whether it's your own or with somebody, and I generally put it away for about a couple of weeks or a month or so before I can put on my director's hat, because it's a totally different ballgame.
and what about when you're doing something like Water and you're writing that on your own?
Mhm.
How is that different?
It's very different. I mean, I think because in one way, you have to you can't blame anybody else, which is like a bit of a drag, but you're totally completely responsible for what you write, and so I'm much harder on myself than I would be if I was in partnership with say you, and uh, I can be a bit more objective. I think when I write my own scripts, I'm really hard on myself, and I put them away and I go back, or I give them to a few people who I trust, who can tell me that this stinks. My daughter always tells me. I mean, I know she'll always tell me the truth. So Devyani says, "Oh, mom, it's really awful," and so it gives you another perspective. David does the same. Hussein, who's been our distributor for years now, is exactly the same. So there are few people one gives it to.
Yeah, that was a wonderful thing about working with you, was having these people that you sent the screenplay to, who just had such an amazing feedback to give us. It was
It was
like,
fantastic.
it
Yeah.
was fantastic. I really
Yeah.
loved some of that. Deepa, let me try and get the question by just talking about my process. I mean, so in order to unlock a novel, the one thing I have to know is what the house looks like. What house are they living in? And it doesn't matter whether it's Buddhist India, 600 BC, or, Sri Lanka in the 1970s. And once I have that key, it's like literally it allows me to go into the project. And I was wondering if there's a key like that for you, like a way in.
There is, in fact. I mean, if I start thinking, and it can happen very immediately, is that I start thinking that, oh my God, what's the color of this film? And for me, when we finished writing Funny Boy and we put it away, and before we went into location, I read it and I said, okay, I know what there's a lot of ochre in this film. There's a lot of mustard. There's a lot of green. It's like, it's a tropical palm leaves, the green of the palm leaves, and the blue, the vibrant blue of the sea, the ocean. Uh, and there's a bit of red for blood that the film or the screenplay is going to have. But and what are the colors that are not there? So there are no purples, there are no oranges. And so it becomes the color palette of a film is, for me, extremely important, because every color is emotional and it stands for something. So in fact, when I read the screenplay and I say, okay, these are the colors of, say, Funny Boy, uh, they're there for a reason. Yellows are for the beautiful sunrises and sunsets in Sri Lanka. And like I said, the red is for the blood that is shed. The green is growth, how RG grows, and also the physical growth of the scenery, of the tropical, whatever. So that really helps me. Once I get the color of a screenplay or the film as I see it, it's much easier for me. And then I can talk to my director of photography about what I see. I can talk to my actors, because that I use the Rust box, which is in Natya Shastra. Have I told you about that?
No, never.
Many years ago, I was introduced to by a really dear friend and a fabulous drama director in India, Neelam Mansingh. She introduced me to the Natya Shastra, which is a treatise, a book that was written 2,500 years ago in India about the art of and the philosophy of performance. So one of the main, and they talked about performance acting, and they talked about production design, entrance and exits, and it's quite amazing. But as everything is rooted in what's called the 9 emotions that an actor can use, or a designer can use, or a director can use. And so those 9 emotions, whether they're bravery, it's cowardice, it's love, it's beauty, it's a sense of wonderment, um, peace, pure 9 emotions. So working with actors on those 9 emotions, knowing the colors that they come from, is extremely important for me.
So when you say colors, can you give a sort of example?
Oh, I thought that, I really feel that bravery for me became actually black, because I feel it's such a false concept. Uh, you know, Cowardice became white. And it's it's those colors. I mean, red is passion, and the obvious things. I'm thinking of green is growth. So,
So would those colors change with different films, or are they sort of a
no,
kind of no?
they
They
change
just
totally with different films. I mean, yeah, they completely change, Sham. It's sort of weird that it's also reading the script after putting it away and then opening it and saying, "Oh my God, what is the color of this film?" Because that's when it becomes a film.
yeah
It stops. The written word actually takes on a hue, which is
yeah
interesting. I mean,
yeah.
maybe I'm being fanciful, but that's the way it
No,
works.
you're not. No, you're not at all, because I watched you direct a scene,
Mm-hmm.
and I watched you. I'm not going to tell what the scene is because I don't want to ruin the movie. But I watched you do the scene, and then you came back and said to the actors, forget all this. You're in the box of wonderment.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
then you stepped back, and then they did the scene, and I just thought, this is so fantastic that there's this shorthand between the director and the actors based on the rehearsal process. And so I kind of wanted to talk more about the rehearsal process, because when did you start working with Neelam? Because you
Yeah, it's gosh, it was, I think it was before Heaven on Earth. So it's a good 15 years ago. Yeah.
so and can you tell me what happens in, because you do a 2-week rehearsal process, right, before the shooting?
Yes. Yeah. And it's the rehearsal process has nothing to do with the script, in fact. It really is an exploration of character. And so the actors don't know anything what we're going to do. I mean, most of them, I think, or usually feel that they're going to come for rehearsal and it's going to be line readings. How am I going to, we read the script together and then, okay, why don't you do this? So why don't you try a different line reading? And they don't know that I don't consult the script at all. I know it, and what I want from them, uh, I sort of know, but they can also surprise me, which is great because we've thrown all the rule books out of the window. We've thrown the script, our preconceptions of our own character out of the window. And the whole exploration of the 9 emotions is done through a grid box. We actually draw a large grid, a 9 on the floor or something, and write down on every box the emotion, let's say bravery in one, cowardice in one, passion, beauty, whatever, and peace in the middle. And they actually walk through the through the boxes and stop whenever they want to. And maybe there's a line that they're trying to explore about their character, or maybe not. And they'll do it quiet without saying a word. They will do it in the box of wonderment, and then they'll do it from the box of sorrow. And then this is how I feel actors can build and make a character more complex. And it's fantastic. I mean, I was blessed with amazing actors in Funny Boy, for example. I mean, all of them, and they all went for it. And you have to have a certain amount. You have to suspend, whatever you know about the way things are done in the West. Rehearsals are done and whether it's Stanislavski, whatever, method and method acting or nothing. It's not like that. It's pure emotion. And I like that.
And speaking about the actors in Funny Boy, I thought it would be a good moment to bring Ali Kazmi in.
Oh,
Ali Kazmi is a wonderful actor.
fantastic.
Who was in Biba Boys and who plays the father in Funny Boy. And I'm just waiting for Hans to bring him in. Oh, there he is.
Oh, nice. Hi.
Ali, you have to switch your thing on, huh? Your
Ali.
yeah, we can't see
There we
you.
go.
Okay.
Hi.
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 Hello, Ali.
Oh, it's so
Ali.
good to see you both.
I
Yes,
know,
it's so great to
to
see
see
you.
you. It's so lovely to see you.
Ali, could you talk? I mean, Deepa sort of began to talk. I mean, I am concentrating on the rehearsal process because I saw the fruits of it when I watched Deepa direct, and I think there are lots of young people, young directors who might be listening, and so it's useful to know how to direct actors. And I was wondering, can you talk about it from your point of view of what the rehearsal process is like?
You better not be very polite, huh,
Be
honey?
very polite, say only nice
Get it?
things.
Yes. Now balls in my court, boss. No, okay. So um, I think to put it simply, uh, I think the best part about working with someone like Deepa is, first of all, she herself is willing to suspend her own disbelief, and even though she knows what she wants, I think this is a great thing. Something that I learned working with Deepa, and I think that it's a great thing for all actors and directors, for me to learn from, is I think the magic is that no matter, and I know Deepa has such strong opinions, and she knows what she wants, but she's also so open, and especially in the rehearsal process, she's so open to letting those rule books out and just throwing them out the window. And if she's surprised by something, or if she sees something, a moment happen, or just like, let's say, whether it was Deepa Boys or whether it was Funny Boy, me, in both cases, if she sees a moment happen, she's willing to just forget everything else and say, forget about the script, forget everything. This, remember this moment, and that really stuck with me because a lot of times, right, Deepa? Like a
Yeah,
lot of times
yeah.
in rehearsals and in things, we tend to forget sometimes what we've done, or we tend to forget what we've rehearsed. Or when you get to set, you're kind of there in the moment, and you're trying to be as real as possible. And Deepa wants you to be real, and she herself lives that. She is as real as it gets. She doesn't want Dukhi Atma, as we say.
What does that mean?
Dukhi Atma means a troubled soul, a sad soul. That's not.
It's like that. Oh my God.
Yes, I got it.
It's that whole thing. And I know if any of the actors that have worked with Deepa are watching, I know they know what I mean as well. I think the beauty of it is, Sham, is that I think she just wants, if she sees something magical happen there, or even if it's on set, and that moment you can never forget as an actor, is that if she sees something magical happening, she will let it happen. And you know that if she hasn't stopped you to say that this is terrible, please don't do this, what are you doing? You know that moment yours just is pure, you're in it, and at that moment, Deepa has let go of everything as well, and she's there with you in that moment. And that is really beautiful because that connection that she forms with her actors is something that's very rare, and you don't really have that a lot
Ali,
of times.
can you give a specific example of that for yourself?
From the movie,
Yeah,
without
whatever.
telling a scene, maybe, or there's so many, but I'll give you one. I'll give you one. I remember that during the rust box, there's a particular line that you take, which you feel can describe your character in a way, or a very important moment for your character. And you say that in that rust box in different ways and different emotions. And at that moment, once you're there, you lose control of yourself. If you really given into the exercise, you do. You try to give up everything you know about the character, about yourself, and everything. You give it all to that moment, and you forget. But what's nice is Deepa watching so carefully, and once you're done, once you discuss the moments you went through, Deepa would say, "Listen, how you did that in that box, remember that." And then you tend to sort of focus your memory on that. And then on set, let's say there's a moment where I had to walk away from something. And I know the first time I did it, she's like, you're thinking too much. It's not registering on your face. It's a very typical expression. Let's not do that. And I love the fact that she will say it like it is and let go of the typical, which is amazing for an actor, for an artist. It's just beautiful to do that. And it's beautiful to be free enough to do that as well. And also, she does not have preconceived notions of what she wants. She's willing to explore that moment. And I remember she just came to me, took me aside, and said, "Remember that moment in the box when he said that line, not like this, but like this." And that moment clicks with you. And then when you walk away from whatever it is, it's completely different and it's washed over you. And there's a connection between the artist and the director. That's beautiful. That's very seldom experience for me as an actor. And that's what I love about working with the boss.
Deepa, do you have anything to add to that now that he has flattered you or praised you to embarrassment?
Oh, Ali. So what are you doing? Let's do another film together, Ali. Okay.
Yes, maybe
I was
a
kidding.
lockdown film.
Okay. Before Ali,
Don't play my emotions like this.
I know. I love you. You know I love you.
Ali, before I let you go, I see you have a question for Deepa. And Ali's question is, what makes you choose a topic or a script to direct and bring forth to the people?
Before we get into that, boss, sorry, I need to quickly preface that question, which is, I was giving an interview earlier today to my old film school. And the question of diversity and race came up and things like that. And I want to say one thing, and this is not just to flatter you, but this is something that is meant to be powerful for all filmmakers out there, is that growing up, one of the few things, and when we got into our 20s and you started to realize more about the world, one major thing living in the subcontinent, growing up in Pakistan, was that there's very few people that actually give people a voice, a true voice, a voice that can be expressed regardless of color or language, or a true topic that is brought out to the people as art. And I feel that we did that. What I loved about Deepa Boys, where I remember this, and I'm going to say it, is that we South Asians, we brown folks can be more than cab drivers and doctors.
Yeah.
And we were gangsters and we were slick and something different for that. And in Funny Boy as well, it's a journey. It's something, you bring out topics and you choose things with true diversity and with people in a certain message or a certain point in mind. Is that it, or how do you do it? Because I love the fact that you actually pick up topics and become the voice of a certain kind of people, and I love that, because that's very few people can manage that. Maybe people even don't take the time out to do that. So how do you do
Deepa,
that?
Thank you, Ali. Deepa, what is it that draws you to a project?
I think we talked about this vaguely. I mean, not completely, but Ali, to answer your question and yours, I feel it's a certain point in my life. I mean, the way Sam and Me happened was because I was really curious about how to deal with being a colored immigrant in a white country when I first came to Canada. So that is, I wanted to know more. I wanted to know, I mean, every actor that I'd seen on those days on television or whatever, who was brown, was either a cab driver and had a terrible Peter Sellers accent. They talk like this is ridiculous. I mean, talk about caricatures, and that hasn't changed much. It's sort of interesting. It's starting to change a bit, but it hasn't changed hugely. I mean, there's still, I remember when we were auditioning for, I don't know, for something or the other, the casting agent brought all these really talented young, brown and colored actors, and when they started doing their lines, they all started with an accent. And I said, "What are you doing?" And they said, "Don't you want it like this?" I said, "Absolutely not. Talk normally. I mean, talk the way we talk. If it's in English, you talk in English normally, but you don't have to put on this crazy Peter Sellers accent, what to do, blah, blah, blah." It's ludicrous what's expected of us and expected of you. And also the kind of films that are expected. So, I mean, Deepa Boys was a huge flop. And I think that, including the Desis, the colored folk and the white folk, nobody wanted to it was politically correct to make brown people into bad guys for the white folks. And for the Indians, they didn't want to be, they want to be successful, projected as successful people. So somewhere and maybe it just wasn't good enough, who knows? But that was, that expectation is huge, from that's imposed on people. And I really am not interested in it at all. So for me, it's always the question of, it has, water was done because I'd read that, what the Manusmriti, which is the whole text of what happens to widows, uh, uh, what, and how badly they're treated. And the whole idea of patriarchy was something that I'd been struggling with, because I was born and brought up in India, and patriarchy is a very strong, a really strong and a very harmful way of thinking for women. So that's what started water. Earth happened because it's about sectarian war, and the Indo-Pakistani war, and Muslims and Hindus, and it's something that I've been so against because of the way I've been brought up, and because I think anybody who's sensible understands sectarian war and being colonized is probably a terrible thing. Whether it's slavery, whether it's being colonized, whether it's the division of a country, whether it's Palestine and Israel or India and Pakistan, and the fallout is huge. So that intrigued me. So Earth happened. Funny Boy happened because I wanted to explore something more than my own color, which is Indian or Pakistani. It's like trying to understand the subcontinent, and also I think really getting into politics much more than I have recent. And for me, this was such an expression, such a beautiful way. Shyam, what a lovely book you've written. Such a beautiful way of getting into from the personal to if you're deprived by not being able to express your voice and your desire, how can you survive in the larger world when it's about politics? So from the personal to the universal became something that was so attractive to me in Funny Boy. So it's also exploring myself. And I think that that's why I love working with actors, is because I learn so much in the process. Yes, I know what I want and I want to get that. But if I'm also open, and when you surprise me, it's like, oh my God, I get really excited. I mean, I know that Doug would say, who shot Funny Boy, and he's done a good job. He said, Deepa, calm down, because I don't even I don't go to the tent and, sit where the digital, whatever it is, and sit there and watch what's happening. I want to be right next to the camera person. And I am. And it's really great because on the screen in the tent, I can't see your eyes. While I'm there next to the camera, I can see your eyes. And that's so beautiful, because that's where it all begins and starts, So it's that's what I love, that I also grow in the process. I also learn something. And I wanted to learn more about what happened in Sri Lanka. I wanted to learn more about the partition of India and Pakistan. I wanted to learn more about what patriarchy and women. I wanted to know what happens in a middle class family in India if two of the sister-in-laws became lovers. It's an emotional journey, and all my films have been informed about something that has always intrigued me, but I don't know much about, but I want to know.
That's wonderful. Ali, thank you so much for your contribution. And
hi, Ali. See you soon.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Deepa, there's a question from Warren Sonada, who's a BAFTA-winning director. And he says, Deepa, your films are powerful and cinematic and so full of life. I love your fundamental need for curiosity you just spoke of. We're in extraordinary, painful, tumultuous times right now. What do you say to our young filmmakers coming up next about being curious about their world and craft? What are your words of advice?
I thank you so much for your kind words, Warren. But I don't even know. It sounds so facile, but I think it's really important. Young filmmakers, don't make a compromise. Don't if you have, if you if you want to tell a story, don't think what will be palatable to get you financed. So don't think, oh my God, it has to be in English or French because I want money from telefilm. Or don't think that it has to have a certain number of, uh, uh, you know, lines that have to be said in a certain way, or some characters that are not white. I think it's really important to stick to what you want. And what the good thing about some of these agencies is, funding agencies, is that they really are changing, and they want to accommodate diversity and not just pay lip service to it, but you have to fight for it. And so don't make any compromises. Be true to your voice. That's the only thing I can say. I'm not good with applications, otherwise I'll tell you how to write them. I really just be true. Be true.
Deepa, I wanted to ask about casting, because I certainly got to watch you in the process of searching and doing auditions and stuff. And when do you know when you found the actor? Like, how do you know it's right?
First of all, I mean, I don't do auditions. I don't get people to come in and read lines, because I like to meet I make a short list of the actors that I think would be right for example, Appa or whatever, and Amma, and we had a short list for Amma, Sri Lankan actors from here, and they all felt right. And then I try and meet them. And I generally, actually, I would say 100% meet them. And I meet them for a cup of coffee when we could go out to have a cup of coffee, and just chat about what they like and it has to, I feel that it's not a question about what do you think of the character, what do you think of this. It's not about that. I just want to know where they are in their lives. Are they adventurous? Are they not? Are they shy? Are they not? Are they cocky? So it's little things like that, and it's not a test. It's just getting to know them, and then out of that, I choose the person who I think would be good. I don't even do a camera test. I think it's a waste of time. It's some people just feel right, and all the actors I've worked with, I actually have had coffee with or talked to or met for sure. And it isn't 100% that you're right on. I mean, you can think of somebody. I've chosen actors. It's happened very seldom, but I have chosen actors who didn't work out, and that's usually my bad. It's not anything to do with their talent, but my misreading of their what we want for the role for them. So, uh, but it happens rarely, and it, like I said, it's usually my bad.
So given that the rehearsal process is such an important part of your process, would you sort of, I guess you'd only look for actors who are willing to commit to the rehearsal process?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I wanted to work with actors who I said, we need rehearsal, or if the demands are absurd, there's this feeling, okay, we're going to be, I've had actors who said, okay, if we're going to go to Sri Lanka, what we want, I'm going to be playing the lead. What I want is for me and for all the other actors, every weekend, I need a car and a driver to take me sightseeing. And I said, this is not the film that we are going to make, my dear. What are you talking about? There are people like that. And it, that's, maybe that's defensive. It's not just being obnoxious. It's just being, it's insecurity, whatever, but you just don't have, I just don't have the time for pretensions like that. Yeah.
Yes, I can imagine. Do you write, especially when you do your own writing, like say of fire or water, do you ever write with an actor in mind?
I did. I mean, I remember not for fire, because it really was my first film in India. So I knew that I remember writing the script, and David was extremely supportive, because nobody wanted to finance it, of course, because it was set in India. It had no no Canadian characters. So it wasn't financed by anybody. It was personally, money was raised by Suresh and David, by crowdfunding, if you can call it, or people who actually uh, gave the money for the film. And um, I think I was telling somebody else that my mother was horrified because I had a lovely necklace that I got as my dowry when I first got married, which I sold for water. And she said, one day, she said, when I was in Delhi, she says, "Where's that necklace?" I said, "Mom, gone with fire." I mean, literally. So it was that kind of a film. Uh, so I didn't have anybody in mind. But I remember when I finished writing the script, I showed it to somebody that was a very respectful director in India, and he said, "You'll never get anybody of any consequence to play any of those roles because it might be so compromising." And luckily, I didn't believe him. I said, "No, I'm going to go for who I think would be really good for it." I thought Shabana would be fabulous to play Radha, and I thought Nandita, I met later through a friend, was just perfect to play Sita. So I didn't have anybody. So go back to your answer. I didn't have anybody in mind.
Let's see if there are any questions that we could take, because I feel like I'm monopolizing you. And okay, here's a good one from Gurujit Man asks, "What's one quality that great directors of photography have?"
What's one great quality? One great quality that they have is they all listen to me. I'm just kidding. No, seriously. What I think that if I think of, I look at a script and I think of colors, I think that directors of photography, if they all the good ones, actually the first thing they think of is lighting. And I think that all, whether it is Doug or Giles or um, they all have an incredible sense of that lighting also comes from the characters. It's not imposed on them. So I think the good DPs, for me, are the ones who actually understand the characters and understand the way they should be lit or not lit.
How can lighting, I mean, pardon the naive question, but how can lighting come from the character? Like, I mean, can you give some sort of example of that?
Well, I mean, yes, of course I can. It's the if I think, for example, Appa in Funny Boy is a strong and a silent and a tough character. How do I want him to be lit? I mean, I don't want it to be soft lighting that makes him look pretty. I don't want it to be too harsh that is so makes him look very obvious. But I want something that walks the line. So if a director of photography understands what I'm talking about and lights the character in such a way that I'm just saying this because it's easy, that a part of him is in light and a part of him is in shadow, I do not know, then it's really amazing. So for me, director photographies are the good ones, are the one are the ones who understand character and the emotional center of a scene. uh, those are really important for me, because for me, every scene has an emotional center. And how do we light that? Or how do the actors actually choreograph that they can go from one part to the other and hit the right note at the right time? So lighting for me is very important, or the lack of it. There'll always be lighting, even if you don't use 4Ks or 14Ks or whatever. There'll always be, there's the sunlight and there's the darkness. So it's very basic.
Um, okay, let's just talk about since we started about the DOP, let's talk about working on set for a bit. I remember reading in your daughter Devyani's memoir about about her and you, that you were so nervous before the first day of photography that you used to vomit.
I still do.
Do you still do it?
Yeah. I always throw up. I always, invariably, it's quite stupid actually. But each time I say, come on, I mean, it's like, I can do this sort of thing. But it's nerves. It really is. I mean, I can't sort of walk into set feeling cocky. I mean, I think it's an exploration that we're all going to go into together, and I'm nervous about it. I mean, I think that it helps me. It helps me to be more open, not, I'm not I'm not the director, kind of director who walks around with a whip and walks and, whip anybody into shape and shout and scream. I hate people shouting on set. So in fact, my first AG, who's been mostly Reed Dunlop, knows that, so nobody's actually allowed to shout, because I want to give that space to actors so they have time to think and be quiet. Sorry, what was the question? I forgot.
No, so I mean, I was curious to know how you've changed. I mean, since between Sam and me and Funny Boy, how you feel you have changed on set. Like, how is it different? How is it the same?
It is different. I mean, if I hadn't changed, I would be really stupid. But I have changed. I mean, the nerves are still there, and I still do throw up. But there's a certain amount of confidence that comes with, when it's like, it's after the first 5 minutes, you just sort of settle into the role. I mean, for many people, it's different. I mean, what I've really realized, what got to me in my first film was that whenever I'd say cut, everybody would disappear on the set to their own group of people, like the ADs, first ADs, or the ADs on set assistant directors would gravitate and go. The actors would all go into makeup or hair or wardrobe, and everybody had a department that they would go to, and I'd be left standing there by myself. It was really true, and I'd say, where did everybody go? And I'd be really, I didn't know the chemistry of what happens on set, and it can be quite unnerving. At least it was for me, and maybe it isn't for many other people, but it was like how alone it is to be a director. And I think if I've learned anything, is that it's okay to be alone. And in fact, if I wanted to go and sit on a chair and be surrounded by people, I could be. But it's much better when you say cut and everybody disappears, that let them go to their own departments and you should be by yourself. Not to see what you have shot or to ruminate, but just to think. So I instead of being scared of being alone and feeling abandoned, I feel now very secure about that, and I like it. So that's the only thing that I can think of.
Is there a collaboration with with an actor or a crew member that you've particularly loved over your career, and that has sort of been changing in a way for you, that has changed you as a filmmaker, developed you in some way?
There has been. I mean, especially with my director of photography. I mean, I have a very strong relationship with them. Sam and Me was shot by the iconic French-Canadian Guy Defoe, who taught me a lot. My Devyani's dad, my ex-husband, had given me for the film a viewfinder, which is, you look at the shot it gives you what's a wide shot, a narrow shot, and you wear it around your neck. And I thought, this is great. So I came to set wearing that, and I sort of looking at the shot that Guy had composed. And Guy said, Deepa, you're holding it upside down. So for me, I said, oh, really? And so I stopped. Guy taught me a really big lesson. He said, this is a close-up, this is a medium shot, until your feet is a wide shot. That's all you have to know. And I've never, ever thought of anything other than what he taught me on my second day of shooting Sam and Me. And so technology, which scares me, if I just threw it out of the window. And so if I want to something like somebody being really small and wide, I mean, I don't even have to think about what kind of lens do I want. I just say, I want something really wide and somebody really small. So I'm not trying to, I don't want to waste my energy on something that I can describe very simply, and I don't have to know the technological terms for it, because my focus is with performance,
You're I know you work very hard and all that like me, but you're a low-key person. And I found that, I don't know how you had the energy to go on set. I mean, like, it was kind of phenomenal to see. And I was curious as to if you have any tips for younger filmmakers. I mean, how do you sustain that? Like, how do you sustain the energy? I mean,
I think because I get really excited about what I do. I think that has a lot to do with it, and it's like a puzzle. You know, it's like putting together a puzzle, and you can lose your energy very quickly on set too. But how do you maintain it is because you think, I'm going to find that piece, come hell or high water, that's going to make this puzzle a whole. So that drives me, because somehow I feel at the end of the shoot is is this beautiful film adaptation of a beautiful book. You know, that's what happens. That's actually what drives me enormously.
and when you, I mean, just as an observer watching you, you seem very spontaneous on the set. You're like, no, we're going to try this. So try, we need some lines for you to get from here to there. And how about this? And so I was just wondering, do you prepare a lot before you go on set? And how do you match that preparation with the improv that seems to happen?
Yeah, I think that the rehearsals for the actors are also a rehearsal for me. I mean, that's how I really, after being cerebral about, as a director, saying, okay, this is what I feel the color palette is, and I've done my work. And for the 2 weeks that we do, or 2 or 3 weeks, or whatever it is of rehearsals, are just also rehearsals for me. And I'm getting to know the characters, I'm getting to know where they stand, what my limitations are, what their limitations are, how much they can deal with improv, how much can I deal with improv, how much do I have to write for them, how much I do not. So that period is a period that's actually a holistic period for all of us. I don't feel I'm training the actors, or the actors are in a workshop. We are all in a workshop together. So that's when I discover what I want. And if you know what you want to a large degree, now you don't always know what you want, then it's easy to improv. I think if you don't, then you could spend hours saying, okay, what do you want? Let's see. I can't do that. It's time is money. And also it's a hell of a bore. I mean, it becomes self-indulgent, and you never know. I don't do more than, for example, I don't do more than 7 or 5 takes. I don't do 20 takes at all. I would be so bored.
Am I right in thinking that you don't like the actors to run lines together before the show, before this being on set, or is that something no,
I don't know. I mean, they're welcome to, but
right.
I mean, they whatever makes them. I mean, I can't control them when they
right, of course.
When we finish the rehearsals, they can do whatever they want to,
Yeah.
and it's up to them. I mean, but it's I would discourage it, because then you become entrenched in how you're going to say it, and things are going to be, makeup, hair. I mean, that's all a part of wardrobe that's going to help you become actors, help the actors, make the transition from the actor into the character. And so without all of that, to have to start getting a really strong idea as to how you're going to relate with your co-actor, I think is perhaps doing a disservice to yourself. You aren't being open, and you being, that might be a bore.
Okay, bear with me. I'm going to see if I can find some questions for you, Deepa. So just give me a sec. There seems to be a whole bunch of them. Okay, here's a good one. From Pod. Lighting and colors are also functions of space and such important tools for narrative. If the DOP must understand the emotional center, what is the role of the production designer?
Mm-hmm. Oh, I love production design. I mean, I don't, when I'm raving about Doug or DPs, it isn't because I'm not totally enthralled by what design does, because what design does is create the space. If lighting, if the DP can give the emotional center, or can light for the emotional center, or know how to move the camera so we arrive at the emotional center of the scene, where somebody is saying something that's of importance, not to be on them or to be on them, then the production designer actually gives the space for the DP to maneuver and for the character to live in and to feel comfortable with. It's extremely important. And without the design, and it's not, okay, I'm going to design a house or I'm going to design a space. You might have to design a cell which is completely bare. But what is the color of that cell? What is the, what are the bars of that cell? So those are things that will actually help the character to become themselves. So without the production design, that's not going to happen. Where does one live? Shyam is sitting in front of a computer. Behind him are a lot of books. What does that say about Shyam? So production designers also have to find the characters, what is suited for the characters, and what is right for them, which is not too much or too little, and isn't over the top, but just gives us fragrance of what's on your desk, Shyam, for example, that could show me that you were born in Sri Lanka. If there's something there. So
Yes.
it's that for me is that smell, that when I can smell the character and feel that the character is at home, and is absolutely dependent on the production designer.
Here's another question for you from an anonymous attendee. What would you tell new directors to avoid doing that you wish someone had told you?
Oh, I would tell them to avoid pretending they know everything. I think that's really important. If you don't know anything, don't hesitate to ask a question, whether it's from your director of photography. Never ask actors, by the way, because you'll get into trouble. But and I think Ali's, if he's listening to this, is probably laughing. It's ask anybody, ask your DP, ask your producer. If you don't hesitate to ask, don't pretend that you know everything. You can't. I don't. I never have. I wish somebody told me that, because I remember for Sam and me, till Guy told me, I was holding the viewfinder upside down. Nobody told me anything. They just assumed that I knew, even though I was a first-time director, but I didn't know. How many books can you read? How many, we've all seen films, all of us see films, but films don't teach you how to direct, but questions do. So absolutely ask questions. And it's don't feel embarrassed. It makes you human.
Anonymous attendee asks another, not the same one, but probably another one asks the same. Have you ever had difficulties with an actor and had to quickly figure out what the actors needed from you? How did you find the solution?
Yeah, it happens a lot. It's about communication. It's about expectations. I think actors are really vulnerable and very, and also, so you have to be gentle. I feel I have to be. I really admire actors. It takes a lot of courage to do what they do. So, so if I come from a place of respecting their craft and the people who choose that craft, I'd feel really weird having my face being on the screen, like 8 feet high, or even on a Netflix film. You're right there, director's gone, writer's gone, everybody else is gone, and you are representing that work. And that's a huge burden, I think. And so I respect them. And I think that maybe because I really respect actors, I don't have a difficult time talking with them. It's not that I'm in awe of them. I respect them. That means that I can be honest with them, and I expect the same kind of honesty from them.
Zaira Nawab says, Adab Deepa, I'm a deep admirer of your work. I've immigrated to Toronto recently. I have been acting and directing for theatre and film in Pakistan. What is your advice as I try to navigate the Canadian film landscape?
Hi, welcome to Canada. The good thing about Canada is that we're not bad. We're a good country, and to navigate anything, it's all about the story you want to tell. And once you know the story you want to tell, then there are few games in town, and there are very few of them that you can go to and say, okay, this is the story I want to tell. And like I think I said that earlier, is that it's important that you don't make a compromise with your story. So don't second guess what people want to hear or what their expectations are. Okay, this is going to be a story about a Pakistani immigrant in a white society. And if you don't want that immigrant to be in a white society, but you want them to live in a certain area of town where they're just surrounded by brown people, don't make that compromise. Make them live where they have to live and should live. So I think that lack of I think belief in your story is extremely important. And the other thing I find that you folks are really, you young filmmakers are really lucky. You can take out your cell phone and make a film. And you can actually put it on YouTube. And I know many filmmakers who've done that in India and in here and all over the world. And it's, whether it was actually Tangerine, which I saw years ago, which is fabulous, made on a cell phone. You can do that. You can do that and put it out there or show it to people, and you actually have a calling card, which is a real calling card. So I would suggest do that. You don't have to wait for a fancy camera or fancy lights or anything now.
Sorry, Deepa, just give me a sec. Maya Bastian asks, Deepa, you often tackle controversial subjects in your films. I was wondering what strategies you have come up with to deal with the pushback you often get from governments, communities, or press.
First of all, I mean, I don't go out and say I'm going to make a controversial film. I think that's a horrible thought. I hate the word controversy. I mean, but I've been asked this often, is that, don't I know that making a film about two lesbians in India will get me into trouble? No, I didn't know. And maybe that's naive and stupid, but I thought this is a love story. What's the big deal? And usually I found that the controversy has been perpetuated by the political party, and I sort of have become, in many ways, I'm an easy, visible target. I'm a woman and a woman of color, and then if I'm making the film in India, I'm seen conveniently as a Westerner, so my color gets forget. It's sort of a weird place to be in, but the way I've learned, I mean, I was devastated by what happened with fire. I mean, the movie halls got burnt, and it was my first film that I'd written myself, and it was very difficult to finance. And like I said, it was, if it hadn't been for David, it wouldn't have been possible. But to see movie halls being trashed, but what really got to me was, I was in Delhi that day when there was a huge counter protest by women who held placards and said, because of course the government said that there are no lesbians in India, so think of 1.6 billion people or whatever it was then, and no lesbians in India, and this is all a Western construct to put Indians down, and there were all these women, packed with women, and they were holding placards, and they said, we are lesbians and we are Indians. So that gave me, to answer your question, it's moments like that give you the power to, or not the power, the strength to withstand a lot of the other crap that's coming your way. That moment of truth, somebody else's truth, that says, it's true. They are lesbians in India, and we are lesbians. So I don't know how to, I get emotional about it. It's very beautiful. So that's how you withstand it, when something that you believe in, as mostly, you don't know what critics are going to say. Sometimes they're going to like it, your film, or not, or they're going to diss it, or they're not. But what you do have is finally the public, let them do it. And I think I told you this, my father was a film distributor in India, and I grew up with movies and Indian movies in Amritsar. And one of the things that he told me when I told him that I didn't want to become an academic and I wasn't going to do my PhD in Hindu philosophy, but I wanted to make movies. he was really surprised. He said, okay, if that's what you want to do, then do it. But remember two things in life that you never know about. One is, when are you going to die? And the other is how your movie is going to do. So it's so true. You have no clue what's going to cause controversy, what's not going to. It's not that obvious saying, okay, if I make a film about lesbians, or I make a film about widows, or I make a film about sectarian war, it's going to be controversial. Who knows? Nobody knows. So why do we make the films if we don't know what the final result is going to be? I think because I make them because I learned something in the process. And I try not to think of what's going to happen because I can't control it.
Deepa, a question from forgive my pronunciation. Maja Drinan says, can you touch on your relationship with post-production? Example, what types of conversations do you have with your editor during each of the stages of production?
Yes, of course. I mean, I think, my editor is extremely important. If my DP and production designer and the first AD and the is helps me, and of course the actors make the film. Once the film is done, it's almost like the second, when you finish writing a script, you keep it away and then you go into directing. And it's the same thing with me with the directing is over, I really take some time and then work with my editor. And this time with Funny Boy, I was working with an amazing editor, Teresa Font, who lives in Madrid. And I remember that David asked me, he said, if you had a choice of any editor that you could work with for Funny Boy, who would you like to work with? And I said, I'm not sure of her name, but I know it's the editor who edited Pedro Almodovar's Pain and Glory. And he said, okay, let's see if we can find her. And we did. And Teresa said, I'll do it. So she'd seen the rushes. So that was our initial conversation. The initial conversation with the editor is always, yes, we talk about what they read the script and they react to it, but sometimes you just don't have the time. And so what the editor, actually what Teresa responded to, editors respond to, is the work. So if she saw parts of it and she thought that she was intrigued by it. She didn't say, I love it and I'm dying to do it. She just said, I'm intrigued. And that for me is amazing. So my relationship with my editor is also my relationship with my actors, is that I hope I learn something from them. And can I listen to them? And can they listen to me? And do we have the same place that we want to go to? Where do we want to take the story? What is it about? So it becomes more a philosophical discussion as opposed to one that's based on the script and what I've shot.
We're, believe it or not, almost out of time, Deepa, incredible as it seems. And I apologize to people that haven't got to all your questions, but I would like to ask you a final question. You work with some legendary composers. You work with A.R. Rahman on Water, and now fabulously, we've got Howard Shaw, who did Lord of the Rings, to do the music for Funny Boy. And I was wondering, what kind of conversations do you have with these composers before you send them away to do the music?
Oh, it's different with different composers. With A.R. Rahman, who I think is just brilliant. I mean, we've done 3 films together. Everybody had told me that he was, they said, are you nuts? You're going to A.R. Rahman for Fire? I mean, he's a very conservative, Muslim, brilliant composer. He's going to freak out when you show him Fire. And I remember showing him Fire, and he saw the whole film, and he said, I'll get back to you in a couple of days. And I thought, no, forget it. There's no way. But we didn't talk about the film, or we didn't talk about what I heard or anything. And he came back 2 days later and he said, I'll do it. So you don't know what's going to happen. Once he did it, once he committed to it, then we talked about character. Where do I see it? But it was very little. I mean, with composers, for me, it's not been The same thing happened with Nitin Sawhney for Midnight's Children. I mean, he loved the book, he loved the script, he loved the whole concept. With Howard, it was, first of all, it was a miracle that this is not Lord of the Rings. I mean, we don't even have that kind of budget. I mean, I thought, what am I going to do? But I really knew, I really wanted him to do it. And he read the script and he was intrigued. And then we met him. We went to Rotterdam and he was there. He was doing, I think he was doing a big show on Crash, based on Cronenberg's Crash. And we spent time talking about what I heard. What do I hear? It's like, I talked to the designer about what I see, the colors. Or I talked to Doug or the DP about the light and shade. I talked to the composer about what I hear and what, the sounds I wanted to hear about RG, young RG, that whole journey. I just knew that I wanted the score to be very sparse and very pure and not wall to wall, but everything should emanate subjectively from RG's character, from the lead's character. And he got it. I mean, he absolutely got it. And I think that it's amazing. It's different. I was really lucky to work with Michael Danner on Water and Heaven on Earth. It's, again, I think that any young people, don't be scared about expressing what you want. Unless you do that, it'll never be your film. So do that, please. So just say it the way you want to. There's no, right way to say, I want to hear the sax, or I want to hear the violin, or I don't want to hear the piano, or I don't want to hear the harmonium. It's not about that. It's about what your heart wants. I'm sounding so soppy. Must be old age, I think. Whatever.
No, it's just it's a wonderful way to end the session. It really is. And wonderful advice for young filmmakers who are listening in. And I'm going to bring in Hans now to wrap up for us.
Okay. Shyam, thank you so much.
Oh, Deepa, it was a
pleasure.
pleasure.
So delightful.
For me too. As always with you, everything is a delight. Thank you.
What a nice guy.
Thanks to the both of you. That was an absolutely wonderful conversation. It's all about the heart, ultimately. Thank you so much, Deepa.
Thank you, Hans. Thank you for having us. This is nice.
Oh, thank you for joining us. And to the audience, please join us Thursday night for a masterclass with Academy Award-winning legendary editor of Star Wars and many other incredible films you know and love, Paul Hirsch. It continues to be a great ride, and we hope it's providing some relief, entertainment, and inspiration, no doubt, in these incredibly challenging times. Be safe, be well, have a great night. Deepa, Shyam, again, what an incredible heartfelt.
Thank you, Hans, for doing this. This is really great that the DGC is doing it. It really is. Good for you. Good for you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks, Shyam. I'll speak to you soon.
Thank you. Yes, Deepa.
Bye. Bye, everybody.
See you soon.
I'm going to get a drink. Bye.